With that, we'll move to the next question, and forgive me if I pronounce this wrong. I think it's Carmen.
Good evening, gentlemen. I don't have the fine credentials as many of you that spoke tonight and asked questions, but I want to say this. I am a wife. I'm a mother of 5 grown, successful children. I've been a teacher coordinator, and I worked in the oil fields for Halliburton, the infamous Halliburton, in Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas, and drove a semi for 14 and a half years. I've traveled all this United States. Now, I said all that to say this. Our big cities are in disrepair. They're full of gangs. They're poor. Everything is going to pot. And you go into many of our historical cities, and they look like third world countries. Now, I appreciate everything you all have said, and I think you're sincere. However, you can say anything, you can sign anything. It's what you do that counts. And my question is directed to both of the gentlemen, and I'd like to know exactly how do we know that when you get in office, if we vote for you, that you won't side with the 2 dynasties that we have, this country has allowed to be built. I am one of the angry Americans, if you can't tell. And I want to know how we can be assured that you're going to do all the things you say. Because as I said, you can say anything, you can sign anything. It's what you do that counts. And thank you for your answer.
The truth of the matter, ma'am, is that you have no assurances one way or the other. You have to take our word for it. And you're here tonight to find out what it is our beliefs are. I can tell you that I am not a member of either of the lesser of evils, is what I refer to them as. I was a Republican. I supported the Republican Party most of my adult life because I am a conservative. But let me explain to you what, to me, conservatism means. It means to preserve well the fundamental principles upon which this country was built. Both parties of the 2 major parties have run us into the ditch that we're in, not only financially, but with wars, with taking our rights, with all these things. I didn't get into this race because I want to be a politician, and I do not intend to stay in Washington, D.C., where I'd be elected. What my job is going to be is for the first 2 years, there are some initiatives I want to do that more affect the way we elect people at the district level that probably won't have time to get into tonight. But there are certain things I want to do to set a precedence so that we can have candidates who are elected by the people and not by lobbyists, not by big money, not by one major party over the other, but by the people of this district. If you go to my website, you'll see, and I don't want anybody to send me any money, not that you would, but my campaign was set up so that only people from this district and only individual citizens of this district were allowed to donate to my campaign. I wanted no other funding. I told Mr. Robert Owens, who has run for Attorney General, but he is also the chairman of the party for the state. And I told him, the first thing I told him when I went and met with him and told him that I was contemplating running as a Constitution Party candidate, I said the first thing to him I told him, I do not want any funds from the party. I will not accept any. Now, he said, don't worry, we don't have any money anyway. But I'm in this to represent the people because I am a citizen who is disappointed and mad, as you are, that our government is just so out of control that we can't just, what we've got is pendulum politics. Right now, it's going to swing back to the right, I suppose. The next time it'll swing back to the left like it did 2 years ago. You know, one group's happy, one group's not. What I believe is that we would probably all be a whole lot happier if we knew that our representatives were going to follow the U.S. Constitution and legislate in accordance with that Constitution. The principles that brought this country together, because we had a diverse group of people in the original 13 states. They weren't all exactly the same. They weren't even all from the same countries, et cetera, had different backgrounds. But they came together on the fundamental principle of liberty. That's what the fundamental principle is. And then they took that, and then eventually, I'm out of time again.
Well, what I've always said when you're looking at a candidate, you should first look at 2 things. Figure out what what that person's background is, what makes, what his core is, what his core beliefs are. And then the second thing is, especially when you run in a large region like this, 16 counties, it's hard to know all these candidates because there's no connection to people that live in Dover versus people down in Jackson or here in Chillicothe or over in St. Clairsville because of the media and there's just no connection unless you've got a family member that lives over in a certain area. And look and see what support that candidate has in their home area, okay? And one thing I'm really proud of, in Holmes County, the Holmes County Chamber of Commerce endorsed me, and I never even asked them to do it. It's because they know me, they know what I've done in the legislature to help people get jobs, businesses grow and create jobs, and that's why they've done that. And I've been the #1 vote getter in Holmes County. I've been the highest. Nobody's got a higher percentage, more votes than me since I've been on the ballot in Holmes County. So I think that tells you, because I had a guy run against me for state senate that I beat him in his own township in another county, and he had got defeated 2 years prior as a township trustee. So that ought to tell you something. If the people in the home community are supporting a candidate or not supporting a candidate, that ought to be a red flag or a good thing. I think too, my record. One thing I'll never forget, when I first got elected in the legislature and took office in January 2003, in October of 2003, all of a sudden one day my phone and my emails just started going off, just got flooded of them. And what it was, the Department of Taxation sent out a notice to all the retailer businesses in the state that said, come January 1st, this is how you will collect sales tax, a big change. Well, in my area, it was going to be a big problem for the businesses, a big burden. And so I got involved, and I went against my party because the governor, Taft, at the time was very supportive of that. They passed this law before I got there. I found out it was a multi-state effort. I got the Speaker of the House after I got my bill passed out of committee to appoint me to the national task force that was working on this, and I worked 4 years, and I got the national task force bylaws changed. And a year ago, last February, the governor signed my bill to keep us on the same system we're on, not go to a very costly and burdensome system. As one example, after the Kelo decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, I took the lead in the Ohio House to protect property rights. Myself and Senator Grindell, we put a task force together. We worked many months, and we passed very comprehensive eminent domain reform that enhances and protects our constitutional property rights from overzealous governmental entities. So when it's time to stand up, I have a clear record of standing up and doing that. And so thanks for the question.
Sue?
Hi, my question is for both candidates. If you plan on cutting the Department of Education, and our answer has been for displaced workers that education is our future and our only future that we will have, no matter if our jobs are going overseas or they stay, is regardless. But my question is, if you cut the Department of Education and the financial aid that we receive, and as a student, I'm very interested in this, and as a displaced worker, I'm extremely interested in this, how would you help us? If you cut the financial aid and the Department of Education, what are your solutions to displaced workers who doesn't have a job, and how we go from here?
Well, education is very important, especially workers that have been dislocated because of structural changes in our economy, and it's always evolving. And I had the opportunity, one thing about campaigning, you have an opportunity to meet people you wouldn't meet otherwise, and it's great. It's a learning experience, and it's just a great experience. And one of the persons I've met on the campaign trail over the time is retired now, but he was an industrialist, has operations all over the world. And you know what he told me once? He said, things are changing so fast in this global economy, is we can't retrain our workers fast enough. We have to have an educated workforce. And what he was saying was, if we have an educated workforce to have the foundation and the skills, mathematical skills and those skills, they can adapt some of that change without having to give them, retrain programs on the job. And so there's no doubt that education is very important, especially in the sciences and in the math areas. And what I like to see, I think we got a big bureaucracy in lots of areas in Washington, D.C. And if we can keep as much of those dollars local in education at the state level and at the local level, we'll be much better off because there's so much waste in Washington. Now, obviously, there's some programs, but now that the Washington administration took over the student loan program, I don't think that's probably going to be healthy. I don't know. We'll see what happens there, but I don't really know anything that the federal government does too right. So But I think education, it's best, it's closest to the people, and let the local communities and states do the direction and keep as much money locally and at the state level. And you know, money that comes into the federal government through taxes, I'd like to see more of it just come straight back, and let the states and locals determine how to use that. Instead, what happens is the federal government, you know, they kind of bribe states a lot, and they got one here. I just realized a new regulation coming out for 1-ton pickup trucks. It's going to January 1st, and they said if you don't do the states, we're going to stop sending that part of that money to the states. So they blackmail states again. So and all they do is add another burdensome regulation on that's going to kill jobs, and too much of that happens. And you know, I have full faith that to send the money back in blocks grants to the states and to the locals, and let our local school officials handle it, and they'll get the best results. And I think that's the best way to do it. You know, we got huge bureaucracy even in Columbus in the Department of Education. So I think as long, you know, let that tax money come back, and let the locals do the program. And if they don't do the job, fire them. Fire them. That's why I'm a strong supporter of charter schools and school vouchers. A little competition in the public school system is a good thing.
I keep hearing this, send the money back to the states thing, in block grants or in whatever way. How about we just keep it here and quit sending it to Washington, D.C.? Yeah. How about we just tell them, you know, you do the things that you're supposed to do by the U.S. Constitution, which does not include education. And we'll take care of it here in Ohio, because you see, we're just as smart as anybody else. We can figure out how to educate our children. Now they've taken over this whole, you know, the college loan program. I have no faith at all that that'll ever work out well. None at all. But when my oldest daughter went to college, she got some grants from organizations, private organizations. Some of those she's still paying back. My concern with the Department of Education is at the elementary education level, more so than at the graduate, postgraduate level. Because they are going to end up mandating what our little kids, like my little 8-year-old that I get ready for school every morning and walk her up to the bus, mandating what it is they're going to learn. And it may not necessarily be what Mr. Sutton wants her to learn. There's been a lot of alarms gone off in some of her things that she's brought home that the school is teaching. And I don't know how much involvement that is at the federal level. But if we didn't have to keep an eye on the federal government, then we can go down to our local school districts and keep an eye on what's going on locally. If you have somebody representing you in Congress that you know, and everybody's going to have to prove themselves, and I'm no exception, that knows that they're going to protect your rights, and that they're going to do everything they can to get the federal government back in their little box, then you can go down to your local school district, because you've got somebody watching your back. It's called the Constitution. This money should stay right here in Ohio, right here in your district, right here in your pocket. I'm against income tax. We need to abolish income tax. And we didn't have it until 1913. There was supposed to be no direct tax. It was supposed to be a tariff-based tax system. Well, what happened to that? Someone thought, hey, we'd have more money if we charged income tax. That was the reason, because they want to do all these governmental programs. And so the federal government started expanding until it started popping out of the box that it was supposed to be in. We got more money now. And it'll never go over 7%. Don't worry, we'll only take 7%, as an income tax rate. Hello, I think it's higher than that. It's going as high as 70, 80, and I'll tell you what, even as high as 90%. When they had the Wall Street